The Archduke assassination. Franz Ferdinand, aged 51, was heir to the Austro-Hungarian Empire. He was married and had 3 children. Franz Ferdinand decided to visit Sarajevo, the capital of Bosnia and Herzegovina, to make an inspection of the Austro-Hungarian troops there. The inspection was scheduled for 28 June 1914. It was planned that Franz Ferdinand and his wife Sophie would be met at the station and taken by car to the city hall, where they would have lunch before going to inspect the troops. A Serbian terrorist group, the Black Hand, had decided that the Archduke should be assassinated, and the planned visit provided the ideal opportunity. 7 young men who had been trained in bomb throwing and marksmanship were stationed along the route that Franz Ferdinand's car would follow from the city hall to the inspection. The first 2 terrorists were unable to throw their grenades. The third terrorist threw a grenade which exploded under the car, following that of the Archduke. Although the Archduke and his wife were not hurt, some of his attendants were injured and had to be taken to the hospital. After lunch at the city hall, Franz Ferdinand insisted on visiting the injured attendants in hospital. However, on the way to the hospital, the driver took a wrong turn. Realizing his mistake, he stopped the car and began to reverse. Another terrorist, named Gavrilo Princip, stepped forward and fired 2 shots. The first hit pregnant Sofia in the stomach. She died almost instantly. The second shot hit the Archduke in the neck. He died a short while later. This event was known as the match that ignited World War I.
Trench warfare, a fight between Germany and Great Britain. Trenches were built during the war. In the middle of both sides of the trenches was a land called No Man's Land. In No Man's Land, there is barbed wire everywhere, making it hard for one side to get to the other. The trench life wasn't easy. There were rats of all kinds that would eat the dead. There was also a lot of water the soldiers were standing in, causing them to have trench feet. The soldiers were often bored, so they would make up games like killing rats and playing cards. Soldiers would also sleep. They would also patrol No Man's Land. While doing that, they would put out more barbed wire. Oftentimes, soldiers would end up bumping into the enemy. They would be too scared to shoot because the machine guns might hear them, so they would pretend they didn't see each other. The most gross part of the trench warfare was the smell. There was a lot that played role into this, but the biggest one was the smell of rotting flesh. Soldiers were often wore masks or had masks by them because of a weapon that they used called mustard gas, which slowly suffocated them. In the trench warfare, a lot happened.
The Battle of Somme. The Battle of the Somme, also known as the Somme Offensive, was one of the largest battles of the First World War. Fought between July 1 and November 1, 1918, near the Somme River in France, it was also one of the bloodiest military battles in history. On the first day alone, the British suffered more than 57,000 casualties. The Somme campaign in 1916 was the first great offensive of World War I for the British, and it produced a more critical British attitude toward the war. During and after the Somme, the British Army saw a real improvement in tactics. Also, the French attacked at the Somme and achieved greater advances on July 1 than the British did, with far fewer casualties. The Battle of Somme is between British and France versus Germans. The first day of the Somme offensive, July 1, 1916, resulted in 470 British casualties, in contrast with the French, who only suffered around 2,000 casualties. By the time the offensive ended in November, the British had suffered around 420,000 casualties, and the French about 200,000. German casualty numbers are controversial, but may be about 465,000. How did it happen? Is on early 1916, the French proposed a joint Franco-British offensive along the River of Somme. Because of Verdun, the British Army assumed the major role of the Somme offensive. Then on July 1, 1916, the British Army attacked north of the Somme with 14 infantry divisions, while the French attacked astride and south of the Somme with 5 divisions. In defense, the German Army deployed 7 divisions. The British attack was planned by Douglas Haig and Henry Rawlinson. The GOC Fourth Army. The two differed about the depth of the offensive and the length of the bombardment, so the adopted plan was an awkward mixture. The artillery was key to the offensive, but it did not have the ability to cut all the wire, destroy deep German trenches, knock out all enemy guns, or provide a useful barrage for the infantry attack. And at 0 hour on July 1, the artillery shifted away from the German front trenches too quickly and left the infantry exposed. But the French, with Verdun experience, had much more heavy artillery and attacked in rushes, capturing more ground and suffering less. After July 1, a long stalemate settled in, with the German army digging defenses faster than the Allied attacks could take place. Despite small advances, the summer became a bloody battle of attrition, and Haig has been criticized for prolonging the campaign into winter, especially for the last 6 weeks. The summer was an expensive lesson in how not to mount effective attacks, but the German army was also weakened, and in February retreated to new and shorter defensive lines.
The 19th Amendment gives all women the right to vote. It took women a long, hard fight to win the right to vote. Women would often get arrested for protesting. Since the 1800s, women have organized petitions to earn the right to vote. In 1878 was when the idea of women voting was first introduced. Later in 1920, it was ratified and women won the right to vote. Lusitania was a British ocean liner holder of the Blue Ribbon and world's largest passenger ship. May 1st, 1915, the Lusitania left New York City. Lusitania was headed to Liverpool on May 7th, 1915. The Lusitania was off the coast of Ireland. Fog is what caused the Lusitania to be seen by the U-20 because she wasn't going fast. The two ships converted around 2 p.m. After watching the Lusitania, Captain Schwager then unleashed one torpedo that hit the Lusitania. Around 20 minutes later, another stronger torpedo hit the Lusitania, causing her to sink. 1,198 passengers died with her sinking. 138 passengers were Americans. A declaration of war was going to be averted when Germany ceased her policy on the unrestricted submarine warfare, policy in February of 1917. Every day, the Lusitania leaks oil. People often refer to the oil as the boat's tears or the blood of the ship. U.S. first enters war. On April 17, 1917, the U.S. first entered World War I. U.S. got $3 billion in loans to help pay for the war. In June of 1917, U.S. sent 4,500 troops to enter the war. U.S. realized they would need more troops. U.S. started drafting men from all over the United States to join the war. 3 million men were drafted. U.S. had enough with trenches and more one-on-one combat. A couple months after U.S. joined the war ends with a treaty when all sides get what they want except for Italy, who didn't ask for much.
The Paris Peace Conference. 32 different countries met in Paris on January 1919 to decide what to do with defeated allies. 3 men took charge. They are called the Big Three, which consist of David Lloyd George. He is the Prime Minister of Britain. George Clemenceau, Prime Minister of France. Woodrow Wilson, President of the United States of America. Germany wasn't invited. Russia doesn't receive anything because Russia retired from war. Lloyd George from Britain said that Germany should be punished, but only so that Germany could recover fast to participate in politics and be a major consumer for British goods. He also wanted freedom of the seas. He also wanted peace without need for revenge. He doesn't want self-determination from Woodrow Wilson 14 points. While George Clemenceau from France wants a very harsh treaty, he wants revenge, he wants compensation. He also wants control of the Rhineland. He wants Germany broken up to smaller states. He also wants sour coal fields. While Woodrow Wilson, the President of the United States, wants a fair treaty, he put in his 14 points, which should be summarized in the world fit for democracy. He wanted self-determination. He wanted fair peace, so no one would seek revenge. He also wants free trade, so they don't have no economic restrictions. But the one thing that he really wants is League of Nations. He also wants Serbia and Poland to have access to sea and disarmament, and free navigation of waterways. There's a Treaty of Versailles. It's in France, where Germany accepted war guilt and lost its colonies. Germany also gave Alsace-Lorraine to France. They also got rid of submarines. Last, the war ends and peace is restored.